everybody. Welcome back to today's Bible study. I'm your speaker, JT O'Malley 9681. And today we are still going to be in the Gospel of Luke in chapter 9, finishing up chapter 9. So go ahead and pause this video at your leisure and say a word of prayer before we get started. Okay, so the title of this one, 3 Types of Discipleship Fallbacks. That's about as good as I could think of for the title, sorry. That sounds kind of cheesy. So let's go and to the Gospel of Luke in chapter 9, from verses 57 through 62. Now, this starts after where John and his brother James wanted to call fire down from heaven to the Samaritan village that did not want Yeshua, which is Jesus, did not want to listen to him about Passover and have anything to do with him during Passover, because they did not believe you'd have to go to Jerusalem to do so. And John and James looked at themselves as like the highest disciples. They were not born again yet. None of the disciples were. Not even the 12 chosen, which were the original apostles. Even they were not born again yet. So they still were thinking of the older times, the older days, like what happened with Elijah and those who, worshipped Baal. You would know him as Baal or Baal or Baal. But they did not understand why fire was called down from heaven, not to scorch those people, but to show who God truly was, or truly is. So, Yeshua turned around and immediately rebuked them, and he rebuked them heavily, because they were doing it all wrong. And it came to pass that as they went in the way, a certain man said to him, Lord, or Master, or Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go. Now, in the Gospel of Matthew, I'll actually put it up on the screen of where this passage is. Much earlier, before this particular timing, another person came up and said the same thing to Yeshua. Which at that point was a Pharisee who had believed that there was something very special with Yeshua, and he wanted to vow to follow him. It doesn't really explain specifically that here, but you can figure it's probably another Pharisee. It's definitely not the same one, but it could most likely be a Pharisee here, because Yeshua says the exact same thing as he did to the Pharisee in Matthew. And Yeshua said to him, Foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. And a Pharisee would definitely know what that means. And we will get to that in a little bit. More than likely, that Pharisee also did not follow Yeshua because of that. Just like in Matthew. And he, which is Yeshua, said to another, Follow me. But he, this other person, said, Lord, suffer me first and go to bury my father. Now, that was a common thing to say, and it did not mean that his father was dead. He wanted to stay until the time that his father would die, so that he can bury his father then, and then he would come and follow Yeshua. But Yeshua said to him, Let the dead bury their dead, but you go and preach the kingdom of Yahuwah. And another also said, Lord, I will follow you, but let me first go bid them farewell, which are at home at my house. Yeshua said to him, No man, having put his hand to the plow and looking back, is fit for the kingdom of Yahuwah. So these are these 3 different types. The first was this Pharisee, and he knew that Yeshua was saying that promotions and wealth of this world could be very costly to follow Yeshua and live for him. You must give up the things of this world to follow Yahshua. And there are so many people who claim that they follow Yahshua, they believe in Yahshua, they this, they that in Yahshua, for Yahshua, but they put the world first. And guess what those things are? Which makes no sense. Game of Thrones, Twilight, The Walking Dead, anything that has to do with zombies, vampires, this, that, stuff that our Elohim, God, has specifically told us is not good to be a part of. And they believe, well, it's just entertainment, it's nothing. That's not what Elohim says. But they put the world first. Now, the second type, it pretty much goes with both of these other two, but there is a little bit of a difference here. If you put blood family first before God, Elohim, then God, Elohim, cannot work through you. Putting God, Elohim first will bring joy into your life. And I can attest to that. So, in the book of Joshua, chapter 24, verse 15, at the end of it, it says this, and Joshua had said this, "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." And that's a good thing to always have to remind you of. You should never, ever just put your blood family before Elohim for any reason. That does not mean that you should dishonor your family and throw them away. When there is a problem, the first thing you should do is pray upon it and ask Elohim what Elohim wants you to do. Then, if you are able to go down to them at that time, when they have contacted you, or maybe it's in your own house with your children and your spouse, whatever the case, you do what you can and listen to what Elohim is trying to tell you to do. In the meantime, while Elohim does Elohim's work. Always put Elohim first. Elohim will let you know what you need to do. What is the best thing that you need to do. Don't think for yourself. Now the third thing. You cannot serve and follow Yahshua if you start looking back to the ways of the world. So you cannot serve for the sole and full purpose of Elohim if you follow the world also. Not one person has or ever will prosper by letting go of Yahshua. There are a lot of people that try to show that they have and are and will, but they're not fooling me. Now, it's like when Yahshua was talking about the plow. When you're using a plow like that, you have it strapped onto a donkey or, whatever type of animal, and you're plowing. The thing is, you need to be doing a straight line. So you need to focus on a certain spot. If you were to look anywhere else, except for that spot that you need to focus, your path will be crooked. Now, when it's saying that is not fit, that someone who's doing that is not fit for the kingdom of Yahuwah, Jesus is not saying that you will not go to heaven and that you will not have salvation. What he is saying is you cannot be used by Yahshua to be a blessing to other people for the kingdom of Yahuwah. And you will not prosper even a little bit for yourself because you're following your own way. You're not putting Yahshua in front of everything and everyone. So, if you go to turn to the book of the letter to the Philippians, and in chapter 3, verses 10 through 14, it says this, "That I may know him and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of his sufferings, being made conformable unto his death, if by any means I might obtain unto the resurrection of the dead. Not as though I had already attained, either were already perfect, but I follow after, if that I may apprehend that for which also I am apprehended of Mashiach Yahshua. Brethren, I count not myself to have apprehended, but this one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forth unto those things which are before. I press toward the mark for the prize of the high calling of Elohim in Mashiach Yahshua. So, no matter how much you may know Yahshua, you shall want to know him more. You must continue to run in this race to everlasting life with Yahshua. Do not let yourself be an I used to follower of Mashiach. Continue to reach forward to the finish line as long as you are on this earth until your time has come. That's what the Apostle Paul was saying in this passage. That's going to be it for this one, folks. So hope you all have learned something from this, and I hope you all will tune in for the next one. Anybody have any questions or prayer requests? If you're using a computer, I'll leave a link so you can go directly to my discussions page and you can leave them there. Or if you're using any other device, a phone, tablet, whatever, then you can just go ahead and just leave them in the comments section. And so, Abba willing, I'll see you next time on today's Bible study. And until then, stay safe. Shalom, my friends. And I bear this Bible study in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ, Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen.